Bonsoir encore, bienvenue à la deuxième rencontre et des discussions autour de l'exposition Formes, Yves Saint Laurent, Formes, Shapes and Forms. Aujourd'hui, notre discussion sera en anglais, donc merci pour la compréhension. We are here today with the artist that participate and is part of the exhibition that it's held, as I mentioned before, in the exhibition space, Claudia Wieser, and Elsa Janssen, the director of the museum Yves Saint Laurent. The idea for today is to a little bit to continue what we left last time. So last time we discussed a little some perspective connected to the work of Saint Laurent, the exhibition, but also the idea of rethinking Saint Laurent in the history of art and the ways in which Saint Laurent could also give us new perspective on the history of art and artists. Today we continue, and last time we were mainly working. We were discussing with an art historian and a curator. This time we explore a similar topic through the eyes of the artist that was invited by Elsa to develop this exhibition and create a dialogue. The talk of today, we mentioned before, is Saint Laurent, Claudia Wieser, a duo show. And from my perspective, coming from an outsider of the museum and also observing exhibition and studying exhibition and the history of exhibition, for me it was very, very interesting to see the approach and the decision to take this idea, this model, which is the duo exhibition, which is not something new, but has a long history, as a method to rethink the work of Saint Laurent and to also create a more contemporary discourse about the work of Saint Laurent. And last time, and I wanted to repropose it here also because we have Elsa with us now, to quote from the catalog of this exhibition, something that I think will lead us through also today discussion, and that I think kind of highlight the sort of not manifesto, but almost the approach that Elsa suggests us in the introduction of the catalog. I'll translate it also for the here the quote, but I'll translate for the people who don't read French. So to inscribe the work of the œuvres of Saint Laurent in the history of art is really the challenge. And that is the challenge that they want to pursue inside the Museum of Saint Laurent, Paris. And this is happening basically in two ways. One is analyzing its imaginary and creativity beside the work of great artistic currents, and on the other side exhibit his work alongside the work of contemporary artists. And I wanted to, again, go back to this quote because I think it's really an important key to read what the exhibition is doing, and also I think the invitation that Elsa did with Claudia. I just wanted to say a few words just for contextualization a little about this idea of a duo exhibition. The duo exhibition is not something new. I think what is interesting about this exhibition is that it shows us a different way to approach a duo exhibition. We had duo exhibition, I just put you here some examples, which were more originating from a creative duo, so the idea of almost merging work and the private life, which happened a lot during the early 20th century, and a lot of artists developed a sort of collaborations, both in, again, public and artistic and private life. Putting here an example of an exhibition which show us a type of duo exhibition between Jean Art and Sophie Taberard. What I really like, and the reason why I wanted to show you this, is the catalogue of another exhibition, which was in the 1950 here at the gallery in New York, was showing also the sort of influence and dialogues between the two works. Of course, when we speak about duo exhibition, another type of exhibition has been the idea of working between generations. So living artists that are actually, feeding themselves as a relationship, rethinking their work, but also kind of helping each other in a sort of art system in this case. Of course, this is a very well-known, very popular exhibition, the relation between Warhol and Basquiat. But I just thought it was an interesting way, to kind of just to start the conversation, to think that there are different approaches that we may have in relation to creating exhibition that works on these dialogue and dualities. Since we have the Saint Laurent Museum, I thought also was important to acknowledge the fact that in these spaces, other exhibition has been done. Although this exhibition was not looking at fashion per se, was looking at two creators and their collecting practices. And this was another way in which we can see a parallel in these spaces. Last but not least, the exhibition Yves Saint Laurent au Musée, which was an intervention of the work and the presence of work of Saint Laurent in different museums here in Paris, which created inevitably, although it was not meant to be a dialogue, it did create dialogues both in relation to art, interior design, and many other design disciplines, I would say, choreography, space, which are things that will come back in the work of today. So I stopped with my little introduction, and I would like to start by asking Elsa if you can tell us a bit more about the idea of inviting Claudia, and we could start maybe like this. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Marco. Good evening. First of all, maybe some few words about the theme of the show. For this show called FORMES, we first wanted to show a less known side of Yves Saint Laurent's work, maybe a side very graphic, very pure, and sometimes abstract even. And so for this show, I have decided to invite Claudia for many reasons that you will discover. Of course, for her talent, because I know I've been knowing Claudia's work for almost 10 years, and for me it was obvious that she could be the perfect artist to set up this show. Why? Because first of all, she shares a different interest with Yves Saint Laurent, and notably, to start, a huge interest in shapes and forms, as you can see in this first slide. You tell me if you want me to. And so, of course, we will see later how if she shares those topics. It's also because she shares. She has taken interest in different artistic movements, such as Bauhaus, such as abstract art, and so we will see it later. And of course, for her sense of colors, that she shares also with Yves Saint Laurent. Of course, for her sense of materials, Claudia, I remember one day a journalist asked you, but what do you have in common with Yves Saint Laurent? And you answer, I think I have in common this sense of materials because I see wood, steel, and I have an idea exactly as Yves Saint Laurent was inspired by leather, fabrics, or silk. You can see in this image the use of mirror for Claudia, and the use of velvet for Yves Saint Laurent in his black hats. And also, and I hope if you have a look to the show, it will give you the same experience than me, that when inviting Claudia, it's also a way for me, but also for all the curatorial team, to have a different look to Yves Saint Laurent's work, because it's a way to, for instance, during many months when we've been working on the show, we adjusted our selections of Yves Saint Laurent's garments, looking at Claudia's work. For instance, we looked at the color game of Claudia, then we adjusted the choices we made for the garments. And in the other hand, now it leads us to pay attention to different details that maybe without looking at Claudia's work we wouldn't have discovered in Yves Saint Laurent's work. Of course, as you know, our museum is located in the former Yves Saint Laurent's fashion house, so it's a particular venue with a corridor with stairs, and it's not that easy to stage a show. And it was really important for me also to take advantage of Claudia's talent, because she has been always working in spaces, and she's even inspired and motivated by this, and so she was the perfect also artist to stage this show. What I have noticed also in Claudia and Yves Saint Laurent's world is that they both are looking, they are both aesthetes, I think, and you are both abolishing the boundaries between fine arts and decorative arts. And it's funny because in the left image, it's image of Yves Saint Laurent's former apartment, is the one he had in the early 70s, Place Vauban, just before Rue de Babylone, which is maybe better known. And you can see sculptures, vases, and as he considered arts and crafts and art in the same way, from an aesthetic point of view, of course. And of course, but maybe it's a huger point of view, at the Museum Yves Saint Laurent, inviting fine art artists, it's a huge gamble for us, because fashion is a perfect way to reveal art through a larger audience. And so it of course recalled us what Yves Saint Laurent used to do with his Mondrian collection in 1965, when at the time Mondrian was not that famous, and thanks to this collection he revealed Mondrian's art to a wider audience. And with this aim to invite a live artist, it's also we pay tribute to this skill and to this ambition, Yves Saint Laurent's ambitious promoting contemporary art and art.
Can I use yours?
I know you go.
Hello, good evening. I just want to introduce my work a little bit. It's very brief, and it's because I make already artwork since around 25 years, so it's just a very brief overview, and also some of my inspirations maybe. And I also want to say I'm a bit embarrassed to be compared with Yves Saint Laurent. I really don't feel that's appropriate, but I was very happy to contribute something to that show. My interest, or I have a few different interests in how I create artworks. It's the space, the architecture, the environment, but of course also shapes and forms, as we see later. And here is, for example, a sample where I tried to change a space. I was still a student then, and I had the idea that the white cube, the most neutral space for presenting art, is maybe not always the best way. So I just, I had no money, and I just took some copies in aluminium foil and changed the space radically, because I thought I want to change the atmosphere and that people enter into a space and come into a different world, basically. Then we go to the next. So you see there are a few samples, the way I worked at that time. Here, for example, I used also a mirror at the end of the space, because mirror is just a very grateful material to play with shades, with light, opened up the space, reflection. We will see maybe in the next image. Yeah, here are, for example, two samples of works I really liked when I discovered it. On the left side, it's a space built by Rudolf Steiner in Switzerland. It's mainly is his headquarters. It's called Goetheanum, and it's like a Gesamtkunstwerk. So he built everything, like the door handles, the garden, the furniture, the building. When you enter it, you're also in a real different space. And on the right side, there is a house here in Paris built by Robert Malisse-Sevon, and I was interested how the mirror was installed there, that it's not flat, that it has this three-dimensionality in place with broken reflection, basically. So at that time I started working with next mirror as a material, because I thought, as I said before, it's just a very interesting material to, especially as an intervention in two spaces. So these are two more architectural samples. It's just a very brief link which I'm interested in. The left building is a theater in Berlin, which doesn't exist anymore. By Hans Pölzig, it's like almost expressionistic architecture, like a cave almost. And the right building is a church by Peter Zumthor. And it's, for me, it's like almost as abstract sculpture in the landscape, and inside you have a church building. It's very interesting, I think. So the space can be, for me, the key point to start a show, and it can be also the space or the thing I'm reacting to. And here I used a gallery space basically as a material or a skin to put something on it, and I decided to not use the center of the space at all. So the space is basically the work and the sculpture in a way. Here you just see more samples of works I did, or how to always make the space possible for me to show in. So sometimes I have to build walls or make other interventions that I feel the necessity to show then. Yeah, this is much more reduced than, but we will talk about later. This has a lot to do with shapes and forms and colors and graphic design. That's another sample where I combined two things, like intervention on the wall, but also sculptural works in the middle. Yeah, there is another aspect in my work. It's just like I sometimes like really to work in a dialogue that can be with an audience which doesn't necessarily go and want to see art, which is surprised maybe, which is in a public space. But the dialogue can be also like here with other artists or fashion. And I'm also very interested in sometimes breaking down the boundaries between fine art and design and architecture, which we will see also. This is which I just installed last week in the Tuileries. It's part of Art Basel Paris Plus, and yeah, it's just there if you like to see it. That's another sample. And yeah, we wanted to, or I was asked to talk quickly how I create an exhibition. So for me it's important to first of all see, of course, and feel the space in a way, and then also get a feeling for it and read a lot or collect materials, but then I would build a model in my studio and really play around. For me, it's a lot like try and error. I don't know every exhibition already right away, so I really have to play. And I make also a lot of drawings. I even play normally in an exhibition space as well till the end, till the show opens. This wasn't so easy here. Because of the garments, it has to be really planned, of course. But that was no problem at the end. Yeah, this is another sample. It's a sketch for a building, a German embassy. But on the right side, you see already the model, one of the models I built for that show. So I had every garment cut out, which was very helpful because you can't put all the dresses or garments on a podium. It's too difficult, it's too fragile, so you have to really plan that in advance. Yeah, so yeah, that's my studio. And yeah, we put that in because I think it's very important for me to really, most of the works are really made in my studio and they go through my hands. I have, of course, help as well, but everything goes through my hands really, and this is very important for me to, maybe it's sounds a bit funnily religious, to get an aura into it or a personal approach. And I like also the imperfection towards industrial products, so for me it's just very important to produce that by myself. Yeah, this is another sample where I talked about before that I like to cross functionality and fine art sometimes, so this would be a bench where you could sit on as well. And this is a kitchen, but it's for me like that was a very important work in a way, because I thought it's like almost like a sculpture as well, and or even like a monolith. So there are no boundaries to do also things which can be used basically. Yes.
Thanks. Thanks, Claudia. The next sort of aspect we wanted to look at is something that also Elsa observed and already mentioned a little in this sort of early introduction to what she found interesting in Claudia's work. And therefore we put together a few slides also to see direct connection or even interpretation. At the end, I think it's also important to, from a curatorial point of view, sometimes things are not necessarily connected to the original intention of the artist, but that allows people and the public to see beyond and see and make sense in different ways about the work of the people we are putting together. So one aspect that recurred in the discussion we had when we were preparing for this talk was this aspect of inspiration and where this inspiration comes from, but also almost a conscious citationism, an idea of citing previous work, both in terms of history of art, but also more in relation to specific artists. Of course, this is something we wanted to say, that it's connected to what we discussed, especially last seminar, on the ways in which Saint Laurent, as Elsa was saying before, paid tribute, but at the same time used as a sort of technique to rethink the work of artists, to rethink disciplines, to rethink, to break down some boundaries between major art and minor arts. Here we simply put some example from the Polyakov collection, Homage, or even the one connected to Mondrian that we largely discussed last time. I think what was very interesting, Elsa touched upon that, this idea that we usually, I mean, of course I come from a perspective of someone working with the history of fashion, history of museums, history of exhibitions, and often what emerged last time was that often we tend to simplify these dialogues, almost like a translation, almost like a copy of an artistic work, while what was discussed last time was that there was a much more complicated dialectic at play in this collection. As Elsa said before, not only Saint Laurent re-gave attention, or a large attention, to a work of an artist, but there was also this very interesting discussion about the way in which you present a work of a piece like this. Well, it's a lot about fluidity, actually, and less about this idea of showing the fluidity that was both in the idea of Mondrian and in the translation of Saint Laurent. So this idea of inspiration citations is more complex than just a pure translation. And I was just passing to ask also, Elsa, how did you see this work both in Saint Laurent and of course in your way of looking at Claudia's work? What did you see? What did you find interesting, and these sort of historical relations with other artists?
As I mentioned, I see Serena at the back, who is the co-curator also of the show. During all the preparation of this exhibition, we kept looking at Yves Saint Laurent regarding different artistic movements. And so for us, we really notice and consider that Yves Saint Laurent was an artist among his contemporaries. For instance, we could talk about Vasarely, Op Art, Ellsworth Kelly. We decided to not put this all this relation in the file, but it's huge. I mean, you can make a lot of connection between Yves Saint Laurent and the artist at his time. And so it's also to show that I mean, to put the stress that the fact that Yves Saint Laurent is an artist, I thought it was the better way to invite another artist and to make this dialogue between them, because you put Yves Saint Laurent at in this artistic language.
And it's something, that's what I was saying before a little, it's something that you saw also in the work of Claudia, not necessarily something that was initially in your idea, but I think in the discussion we were having was to show also how it's not just Saint Laurent, but almost like a sort of genealogy of relation with the past. So not only Saint Laurent that quotes or translate or rethink the work of artists, but also
yes,
the work of...
and it's funny because this image of Robert Delaunay was used to take part of to be in the private art collection of Pierre Berger and Yves Saint Laurent, and it's funny to see that there's some link between one of your artwork and this Delaunay's piece. But maybe you can say.
I think it's always. I think you can't make creative work in a how can I say
In a
that, in a
vacuum.
space, in a vacuum, yeah. It's always more or less, of course, a kind of influential process. But I think with Yves Saint Laurent and Pierre Berger, it was very clear that they had such a incredible taste towards artworks which they bought and found very early, which is very unique, I think. So I think in that case it was a very, very strong connection. And I think other maybe fashion designers or whatever creative people look maybe for other inspirations, not necessarily art, but in that here it's very clear.
Mm.
Yeah, and you also, we were also showing some other work, because again in these dialogues, if you can...
No, I actually, this left image is a room Vasily Kandinsky created. It's not existing anymore, it's rebuilt, but it looks different, I think. It was for a building exhibition, and I only saw this black and white photo and very long ago, and I thought this is very interesting because you can use a material which is basically used for houses for functional reasons, and make a painting with it at the same time. That's why I actually started to try it with these types. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also what becomes clear in what you just said, and also this sort of movement between fine arts and more decorative arts is this idea of interdisciplinary dialogues and the work of total work. And I wanted to also to contextualize a little, I mean, from a sort of a fashion, let's say, curatorial point of view is not always common. I mean, as I said before, historically we had fashion has been using, or fashion curator have been using the languages of art and fine arts to exhibit fashion, but in a very, I mean, almost as a translation of the models of, or the sort of ideas behind the way in which art has been exhibited. So this idea of originality, authenticity, and what for me, again, as an external coming to see the exhibition, what was very interesting, especially when we started to discuss, and these images came up in our discussion, I immediately clicked and I said, okay, this is really what this approach is about. It's this approach of interdisciplinarity, which may sound weird, but in fashion museum is there, but it's not there with this intentionality, I think. And that's why I wanted maybe to ask you, Elsa, how this, and we have more images after, how do you see them, and how do you see them in your sort of curatorial approach to the museum?
Yes, in my job, I've been always attracted by creating a total experience, and I've noticed that finally you can find this perfect experience, especially in performing arts. When you go to opera, when you go to theater, it's true that you have fashion, you have music, you have decor, and you are overwhelmed by all these arts. And I was thinking that you don't have that much feeling in museums, because you have 2D. I mean, it's beautiful because I love art and contemporary art, but it's only 2D artworks featured. And it's true that we are lucky because in the fashion museums, it's much more easier to give the hand to fine art than the contrary. I mean, most of the art museums won't have the idea to invite fashion designers. I mean, it's not that obvious. But in our case, it was quite obvious that we could offer to our audience that kind of total feeling, total art experience. especially because our garments are 3D dimensions, and so it's not hang on the wall. So it means that you have left spare walls, and you can work with a different level of visual aspects. And so those images are really relevant because you can see that you have different layers of visual intentions, costumes, decor, and I think thanks to Claudia, and especially maybe in the room, the black and white section, you really succeed to give this, this feeling of total art.
Yeah, maybe Claudia, you can, because you did also already worked with, of course here we are in a public space, open space, but at the same time there is this question that you were mentioning before already when you're saying here it was a challenge also to work with mannequins and garment.
Yes.
So if you could say something also about this project and the role of body and
So this is a project, or these are 5 sculptures. They were for 1 year in Brooklyn Bridge Park in New York, commissioned by Public Art Fund. That's an institution just making public sculptures for, but only exhibitions. They're not permanently there. So on the last day, maybe we go to the next image, then we see more of it. Yeah, on the last day, I decided to invite a dancer or to choreograph a piece with my sculptures together, because I was interested how that interacts, and to basically load the bodies with the sculptures and the other way around. And of course it's the same principle. Here you have static mannequins, but in a way it still sometimes adds something to both of the positions, and that's what I think you try to create with a dialogue, that both sides profit from these interventions.
Maybe we can now understand composition, and maybe if you can say maybe a few words on how the creative process pass. I mean, we see there some books or something, so you have to study it.
I got a lot of books.
Yeah, which is an interesting part. So how do you, I mean, honestly, and you were mentioning before, that you felt a little, you don't want to compare your work because it's, I mean, but still, I mean, how do you approach a work like this? On invitation, I guess.
I always thought it's good that I'm not French. I don't know why, but here he seems almost like a god, and I mean, he's in German. I'm German. He's there, very important too. But I think we still, I mean, have not that respect, and that was, I think, very important for me, because otherwise I couldn't have done it, I think. So Elsa invited me, and then we met here, and the first thing was to go into the storage archive and look at garments.
A lot of garments.
Everything up there. just to feel it somehow, I don't know. And from that point we just met quite regularly every few months, and just circled it in basically. And of course I read also a lot, because I knew things about him and his work, but not as much as I needed here. And then we just, I don't know, maybe you want to say something about the process as well? How we started and...
as I mentioned previously, we invited 4 chapters devoted to each to form and colors, black and white, geometric shapes, pure form. then we have chosen the garments, but looking at Claudia's work also, because we wanted, of course, it to fit together from a color point of view, from a graphic point of view. And then we had many conversations, and Claudia sent us images of models suggesting us different proposals. And we, for instance, for this room, I remember
you show only the good ones.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, it would have been interesting to show the different pics you sent us. But it's true, when you sent this one, we totally agree in the team that it was this proposal which win. Yeah. And yes, and which is really amazing. I guess you share my point of view, that when you look at the pictures of the model and now the original image, I mean the true one, it's precisely what you designed first. So.
So how did, I'm very personally interested, how did the selection, and how did you combine, how did you, also because, it's true that we are different parts, and we're going to show you, I'm a bit aware of time, but we're going to show you another part where we were looking to more silhouette and forms and shapes. How did this one, for example?
The space?
Yeah.
You mean the choice of garments or the whole?
Both, actually.
Both, yeah. First, we had the garments, I would say, in that case. It was clear, as you said, we had different sections, and that was very graphic, black and white space. And I had also very, very different proposals, I must say. For example, with the whole space was wallpaper. And this is what I tried to say before. I have to really try it in a model to see if it works or not. And so, as you see then, the model of this and that, we already got an impression this could work. And of course, I tried to dialogue with the garments you see here, there's always the question, if you make something very different and that you create something which is very contrasty, maybe something really not graphic, and I don't know. This is a way to do it, but I decided in that case it's better to do something which is in the same formal and aesthetic range, and try to more or less make it stronger somehow, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can briefly also move into other sort of dialogues that you created and you found inside, and going into shapes, color, and materials, which is something that you already mentioned. Of course, I just put here, again, it's my obsession with exhibitions and the way in which Saint Laurent also had worked. This exhibition, which was held in 2019-20 in Lyon, was actually looking at the attention of the variety of materials, of textile research that it was developed, the experimentation also with very poor materials, but also very elegant materials. So in Saint Laurent's work, we see this sort of transformation through shapes, but of materials as well. So this idea of trying quite traditional shapes also with untraditional materials, and through that action create something new. And then we kind of, maybe Claudia, you can lead us through some of this inspiration of your, of how you build also shape and how you develop your shapes to some extent.
Yeah,
materials.
Inspiration it can be anything in a way. This is also not, you can't plan inspiration. I think nobody can do that. So sometimes you just see something and it makes click, and there will be something happening with it, or you can transform it into something else. So this, for example, is just vases by Ettore Sozzas, which is was an Italian designer, and I really liked them because I thought these are almost like different persons and characters. And there's another reference where I also thought this is very interesting. It's a performance by Oskar Schlemmer. He worked in the Bauhaus, and he used his dancers to create some abstract sculptures with them. And then you saw before the wooden sculptures, I thought of these could be almost symbols for persons or family constellations. And now you see the vitrines which I designed in the show here. And I got total carte blanche to do that. And I felt this was the most difficult part for me because they very difficult in a way. They very huge and not very deep. And it was clear that there will be accessories in it, like shoes, like earrings. And it's not very easy to present these little objects, to be honest. So I tried to make something almost like a painting somehow, with different colors and shapes and a composition, but include all these accessories in it. Or not all, some of them, because there are many accessories, I don't know, 80,000 or many. So it was also difficult to choose them in the first place. And also I tried sometimes even to put a bit of humor in it as well. Like the gloves you see on the right side, which look almost like ghost hands or something. Yeah. I think the accessories, they are very difficult to handle. First of all, in terms of presentation, but also they are have not the main focus in this museum, because he's just more famous for the garments. And so it's quite hard how to introduce them as well. And then you have also a lot of issues about conserving them and how to actually fix them on the wall, or if you lay them, you don't see them so well. So that was a challenge, but I really enjoyed it also because I felt like doing a painting almost with it. Yeah.
Yeah, you told us a little bit, since we're speaking also about materials, how these, for example, compositions, how did you work with materials here? How did you select?
Yeah. The next one, for example, if you can go back, the shoe, I just clearly, as you can see, tried to take the shape of the shoe into my sculpture somehow with and you see this line which goes down, that's gold leaf. So I also very often, and that I felt does Yves Saint Laurent as well, is like playing with matte and glossy, with soft and hard, with dark and bright, also creating contrasts, material contrasts, which is also very important for me, like warm and cold colors, color contrasts. So I felt there's some kind of familiarity to do that.
Thanks. And to finish, and then we open to questions, there was this final reflection, which is connected also to the catalog, which is this idea of rethinking archive, and it's something that is happening a lot. I mean, we published, I co-edited an issue of Archivio magazine, which is looking into archives at large, and for the next 4 years, actually, we will work on different type of archives, we just published an entire issue on fashion archives, which looks at different type of archive in a very large way. But it's also a testimony, I think, it's a symptom of the ways in which archives have been rethought today, especially in a field of fashion that where we had a quite traditional, as what I was saying before, connected to your approach, Elsa. I think there is now a history, but it's also almost a quite heritage in itself of the ways in which fashion is supposed to be presented, is supposed to be looked at. While at the same time, a lot of brands today are rethinking and speaking about living archives and the necessity of showing the contemporaneity of their archives. And inside the issue, you will also find a contribution from Elsa, with a collaboration of also Maria Delas, where we have some images from the exhibition, not really from the exhibition actually. They were like staged images for the catalog. Can you tell us a bit about that? And your idea is not the first time, you did it already in the previous catalog, about this idea of almost rethinking the archive, or...
So here it's the Musée, Yves Saint Laurent's museum, but it's also the home of our amazing collection, which, as you know, is divided into 3 body of works: textile, graphic arts, and documentary images, photos. And our job is to first protect this collection, but it's also to highlight it through exhibitions, catalogs. And for me, it's great opportunity to work on our iconography. We have many images, as you can notice, for instance, press coverages, backstage images, and so it's also our job to continue to develop this iconography, this collection of images. And so in the same perspective, I'm very pleased to invite talent to have a look to our collection and to design, to set design an image to highlight from a different point of view our archive, and to create new images for our collection. For instance, we are now working on our next book on flowers. It's the theme of our show in in 1 year, and so we are working on the book. And next week we are going to organize a huge shooting with a young photographer also, which has a great universe. And so it's also, yes, this idea of making always to keep Yves Saint Laurent as actual as possible. And so for the book of form, I was very annoyed because I wanted that Claudia took part of the book, but as you can imagine, a book is already done before the exhibition starts, and so it was a way to invite Claudia to have a look in our archive and to create a new body of images.
Thanks, Elsa. I think it's, again, I want to reiterate again, but I think it's this way also to, there are many layers here, as you said before. It's also almost a methodology that Saint Laurent had. And it's quite interesting to look it applied to curatorial practices and the way in which you look at a museum today. So we open for questions. Question can be both in English and in French, of course.
So in English. Good evening, thank you for the talk. I have one question about did you use some works you have done before, or it was only for this exhibition you have created?
There are two works which existed already, I think. Yeah, when you come in, there's on the wall a long frieze, and then we saw a round copper piece that was. We looked also at my former work and decided if something really fits, then we don't need to make it new, basically. But most of it was newly made.
It's a good question because the first, if we go, so here, this is the artwork which already exists, and it's a bit the key point, the key starting point of the show. And as you can notice, we have chosen the colors of the 3 dresses looking at this artwork.
So thank you, first of all, for the very clear explanation. To follow on his question, what are you going to do with your pieces of art once the show comes down? Yes. And how will they stand on their own without Yves Saint Laurent dresses to dress them up, if I can say?
This is a good question because I often make artworks for a specific space or environment, but I still always make clear that it functions on its own as well. This is very important. Otherwise, I would think it's not a piece of art, it's more a decoration or something, you know, like, and I'm quite sure that these, for example, black and white triangle pieces in the black and white room can be like a painting anywhere on its own. But of course they will miss the dress.
Since no one else has anything. Just going back to Andy Warhol, who started as a window dresser, and then he snuck his own artwork in, and then it stood on its own. Why is window dressing so looked down upon? I mean, what is the difference between a great window dresser and what you've done here? And that's not an insult, it's a compliment to the window dressers. So why are these two things different categories? If it's in a museum, it's art. If it's in the shop window, then it's considered just a support for the clothing.
She could have been invited by Bon Marché, or it's very common. It was my
the Bon Marché invites artists. They had Gupta, they had lots of installation work artists. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the context is important, and also the definition of it. Like Andy Warhol, of course, he worked with daily objects and industrialized processes, but he then declared it at one point as art, and it was also the concept embedded in it as an artist. So I think it's a very difficult question you ask here, but in a way the audience has to declare what it thinks it is at the end. What do you think as a curator about it?
Yeah, but also it's particular with this example of Claudia, because she's working on an archive belonging to a Musée de France. Yves Saint Laurent, it's not Stella McCartney today. I mean, because you have pieces from the 80s, from the 70s. It's for us today is considering it as art because we are Musée de France. So Claudia is working with art in a way, not with fashion. Yes,
but fashion isn't art?
No, but it's
I was trying to bring the
As
window dressers up.
maybe
to
it's interesting.
recognition,
Maybe
not
she's
bring
working
down.
with
You know, it's not an insult. It's
she's
very-
working with items, as we speak in museums, belonging to a museum. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, but I also understand
It's not for-
in Africa they don't really have the principle of museums, and this is an excuse not to give back the stolen artwork, because the French say, well, when you build a museum that's merits, then we will give you back what we've taken. And the whole concept of putting something in the museum, that's not the only definition of art.
No, it's not.
Look at land art.
Yeah, but it's two different debates. It's not exactly the same debates. I totally agree with you. It's not because something is not in the museum that it's not art, but in that special case, it's exactly the contrary. It's because so we can consider that if Yves Saint Laurent if the Yves Saint Laurent's archive is Musée de France, it means that the state and different very clever people have considered Yves Saint Laurent's archive as a trésor. I mean, I don't know if...
Maybe I think it's also this debate between display and commercial display and museum display. We're speaking about exhibition design and display of commodities, and I think the context is everything, first of all. And there's been some trial, I think, in the history of exhibition of attempt to put together, you know, these two different things. I mean, there is a group called Atelier EB who actually staged a window shop of the 1970s. To kind of play and question that element. So there are different examples, but I think it's also interesting to look at why it's looked down by, like many other practices in the fashion industry. And it's slowly changing, I think. Also there are books on display, a lot of important architects, a lot of important designers worked for major, department stores in the US, in Italy, in France. I think Elsa's work before is super interesting in that sense because it was a gallery inside a department store. So these kind of boundaries are all...
Yeah, in Japan you have some of the best galleries are in the department stores. That's where you find them.
So I think it's changing. It's not that... I think the recognition of even... people working within visual merchandising is really changing also in the art scene. It's very difficult to make this. It's much more blurry, I think, today.
Okay.
So I have also questions. So thank you so much for interesting story and so telling about all the concepts. It's very interesting today joining. Maybe it's some point can be similar. So my interest was like how beyond kind of boundary, because like fashion, art, like architects, I think there's some like similarity. But you know, like Yves Saint Laurent also like see some vision to influence all the maybe generations. So like anyway, so beyond the boundary. So Claudia also maybe challenging many things. So how you include your ID to the Yves Saint Laurent, and so from your let's say all the process in this time. So what is where is the interesting point you find like beyond in your area? So maybe that could be my question. So maybe some curiosity, yes, to understand.
So cool. You mean what's a hidden pleasure I had doing that, or I just to dive in that world was very interesting for me, to be honest, because you could have looks into something which not everybody can have. It's a very exclusive thing at the end, because to look at all the archives and be so near to somebody like him is just very inspiring, I think. But I can't tell you now curious things about. No, sorry, but it just felt very privileged to be involved in that, honestly, and also that so many people see that. It's just very unique, actually. How many visitors? 50,000?
Yeah, 50,000.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.